Hi everyone, my name is Karis Gingeresti, and welcome to my presentation on the links between children affected by trauma and learning disabilities. I decided to do my research on trauma as I have a strong interest in this area. So my question was, is there a link between children affected by trauma and learning disabilities? And if so, what is the nature of that relationship? Let's take a look at these two children. Can you tell the differences between them? I'll give you a few seconds to think about it. Yeah, I only came up with some assumptions myself. So what is the difference? What's actually happening in the brain? This is what got me thinking, and this is what started my research. Let's start with the differences between trauma and learning disabilities. Trauma can be defined as a wound or experience that causes shock. This could cause either physical injury or psychological injury. Some individuals can develop symptoms that persist and result in impairments in important areas of functioning. Mostly, we see trauma-related stressor disorders manifest in emotional dysregulation or coping mechanisms. This emotional dysregulation and coping mechanisms we see in the functioning blocks. However, it is possible to see manifestation of difficulties in the memory block, which is in the processing blocks. However, some individuals can recover from trauma if it hasn't been a prolonged event. So what's actually happening to the brain during a traumatic event? Well, if the trauma is prolonged, there is a release of stress hormones, cortisol, and adrenaline. Extra release of cortisol can actually be neurotoxic to the brain. It can destroy synapses and establish neurons. Then this shrinks the hippocampus and causes memory functioning difficulties. Now let's talk learning disabilities. It can be defined as an unexpected underachievement due to a genetic or neurobiological factors or injury that alters brain functioning. These impairments we usually see in the processing blocks, including memory. It can affect many different areas of life and can range in severities. So just to recap, the links and definitions are trauma, whether physical or neurobiological, causes injury to the brain, usually in the functioning blocks, but it also affects memory, which is in the processing blocks. Learning disabilities could be injuries that alter brain functioning in a manner which affects one or more processes. So, by definition, one is inclusive of the other. Learning disabilities are lifelong, and so could the effects of trauma. Unfortunately, according to the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act in 2004, under public law in the United States of America, they have an exclusionary clause. This clause states that a learning disability does not include a learning problem that is primarily the result of visual, hearing, or motor disabilities, of mental retardation, of emotional disturbance, or of environmental, cultural, or economic disadvantage. Even though trauma can be seen as an exclusionary factor, there are some other links. Comorbidity between trauma and learning disabilities is very common. There may be a lack of attachment between parents and the child. It can cause trauma when a child becomes cognitive aware of their disability as well as with their parents. Studies have shown that there is a higher percentage of child abuse among individuals with learning disabilities. Growing up with learning disabilities can cause a loss of sense of identity or even fear, whether that be social, sexual, self, or even independence. So not only is trauma an exclusionary factor, but very commonly a secondary one. So how can this help our practice? Early referral to a school-based team and intervention is a big factor in being able to make a difference in a child's life, academic or otherwise. All students are different and therefore need different things, even if the children have been diagnosed with the same disorder or diagnosis. However, we need to keep in mind that often if a child has been diagnosed with a learning disability, it is probable that they may also suffer from some kind of trauma. Whichever way you look at it, each child's needs are different from another's. Getting to know the child, what works for them, and what may trigger them, and their histories can help us on the road to helping with early interventions. A big thing to remember is that we're here to help and not fix a child. Many times, just being a smiling face can make all the difference. In the meantime, putting in strategies in your classroom can help many children, diagnosed or not. Things like safe places, social emotional learning, breaks, visuals, and extra time can be essential to some, but beneficial to all. Thank you for watching my presentation on the links between trauma and learning disabilities.